Neg said we're going to talk more about something a little bit more tactical now. This morning's been filled with lots of great ideas and insights about the current environment that you're in, how to transform the business to capitalize on the opportunities that you've gotten. And what we're going to focus in on is getting a little bit more tactical around the sales organization and how to maximize their performance and actually optimize their performance. And no conversation about sales performance is complete without some discussion of the environment in which we're selling. Because the fact of the matter is that depending on the environment, some things that worked in the past would no longer serve us well going forward. And I know this from personal experience because I actually got into sales many decades ago. I don't know how bad the lighting is, but can you tell? Like literally decades, plural, ago. When I got out of college and I began selling building materials in Dallas, Texas, which is actually a euphemism, I was selling wood to home builders. And it doesn't sound all that great, but I was selling wood in a building boom, so it was spectacular. So right out of college, I'm making about $50,000 a year, and that's decades ago, so it was a lot of money, right? I had a $750 a month car allowance. I had a cell phone that bolted to the floor of my car, and the actual receiver was half of the trunk, right? And what was beautiful is I never had to leave town to live the dream. And it was outstanding, and I was making all kinds of money. And the fact of the matter was that it wasn't necessarily that I was actually all that good, but the environment was that good. And I know this because 3 years later, not only was I no longer in the building materials in Dallas, but there had been a real estate bust, and the company that I worked for wasn't even in business. The fact of the matter is, folks, that markets change. Selling environments get more challenging. And if we're going to understand what we have to do to optimize sales performance, it's essential that we understand the environment in which we're selling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a couple of characteristics on the screen. Given what I've heard this morning, I expect that you'll recognize some of these things, that you'll be able to relate to them. But let's talk through them just for a minute. And by the way, can we raise the house lights a little bit? Because I want to be able to see hands. Oh, there are people out there. I thought literally everybody was still in the lobby. Whew, that was close. All right, so we'll go through a couple characteristics here, and I want to see whether or not you recognize these things. Like I said, I think you will based on what I've heard this morning. Some of the characteristics of an environment can include things like an influx of new competitors, things like disruptive technology coming into play. Another environmental characteristic that can affect sales effectiveness is rapidly changing market conditions. In addition, sales effectiveness can be affected when new solutions enter the marketplace. And in fact, new solutions, believe it or not, and new technologies can actually drive the idea that what we offer is becoming commoditized. Now, from a sales perspective, here's what really troubles you. It creates tons of buyer confusion. And when buyers are confused, sales cycles get extended and margins erode. How many of you recognize some of these characteristics? Go ahead, raise your hands. I can see some of your hands. Raise your hands if you. How many of you would say that these characteristics accurately describe the local search market today? Raise your hand if you think it. All right. The good news and bad news is, yeah, it's a challenging environment. However, you're not the first ones to go through this. In fact, you're not the only ones because markets tend to be cyclical. The kinds of challenges that you're facing today have been experienced by organizations in the past. And in fact, one of the more recent examples of this is the local telecommunications space in around the 2000 time frame. It was about that point, it was actually about 5 or 6 years earlier that the government decided to deregulate local telephone markets. And the result of that was an influx of new competitors, lots of new solutions, new technologies being employed, rapid commoditization, very confused buyers, and an enormous sales challenge. That's not the first time it happened. That's just one of the more recent and more analogous to the situation that we face today in local search and local media. The key question for us is, what did we learn in the previous experiences that we can actually apply going forward to truly optimize the effectiveness of our sales forces now? What can we do differently? And what I'll suggest to you is the first and most fundamental lesson to learn is that the buyer conversations play a significant role in decisions that they make. In fact, this is from the Corporate Executive Board. Their study found that the conversations salespeople have with buyers have a greater impact on the decision the buyers make than the product, the price, and the brand all combined. This is a critically important lesson for us to learn if we're going to improve our business results going forward. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a salesperson, and I would love to have the hottest product on the planet. I would love to be working for the company that innovates so well that they are the only ones that have this product, and it is a product that everybody must have. When supply can't keep up with demand, sales jobs are great. I mean, if you work hard and you show up, even commodities can be like that. When lumber was booming, when the real estate market was booming, lumber was like that. You show up and you're responsive, you will make great money. But let's face it, folks, the likelihood that everybody in the space, all of us, each and every one of us, is going to create a unique product that is so special, so powerful and compelling that everybody must have it so that we all do well is pretty slim. Now, I'm not suggesting that we throw our arms up and stop innovating, okay? So that's not the idea. I don't want anybody throwing apples at me from product development groups. Break, all right? I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is if that's the only investment that we make, if all we do is invest in innovative new products, then we run the risk that we innovate, but we don't actually derive the economic value of the innovation. And frankly, you don't have to look far to see examples of that. The annals of American business history in particular are littered with great technologies that didn't work. Either they weren't sold properly, they weren't supported effectively, they weren't marketed properly, and what you end up with is good lessons about how to lose with great products. What this slide shows us is there's more to our success than just innovating in terms of products. There are other things that we've got to do. And in fact, what I'm going to share with you, since we're in Vegas, what I'm going to share with you is a list of 7 things that you can do in your businesses to drive significant improvements in sales effectiveness, that ensure that if you are making investments in product and technology, that those investments don't get wasted because the sales organization lets you down in the field. All right, now just real quickly, get a lay of the land. How many of you either directly or indirectly run a sales team? Raise your hand if you run a sales team. All right, they all stuck together on this side of the room in the back. Raise your hand if directly or indirectly you support a sales team. Marketing, customer care, product development. Okay, everybody, folks, everybody who raised your hand, every one of us plays a role in driving sales effectiveness. So there will be something on this list for every one of you. And I will promise you this, if you invest in these 7 things, you will do better than if you go play craps. All right, it will make much more economic sense than what you might otherwise do later, okay? So here's what we've learned. The most prosperous companies, the ones that survive the tumultuous economic cycles, here are some of the things that they've learned they've got to do in addition to innovating in terms of products. Not necessarily in place of, but by the way, it can be a stopgap to help in between product innovations also. So 7 things companies do to prosper. The whole list is popping up at once, so I'll go through them. And we're not going to get to talk about every one at length in the time that we've got. I'm going to talk about 3 of them in a little bit more detail, but real quickly, let's run through the list. The first one is create a common selling model. I mean, let's face it, if you run a business, you wouldn't think that you could hire somebody to work in accounting that has no accounting degree and then measure them solely on the number of transactions they process and call that success at the end of the day. Folks, that is exactly what we do in the sales profession. There aren't but about 7 universities today that offer degree programs in professional selling, so the likelihood that you're hiring somebody who's actually been properly trained and developed to be a sales professional is very slim. Giving them a quota and a mobile phone and a list to call is not training, and it's not developing the professional habits that are essential for their success. And since we often don't do it, we get very sporadic results. We got to fix that problem. Then, number 2 here, if you implement a selling model, do not implement the model by having your CEO stand up in front of a sales conference and say, we've implemented a selling model and we expect you all to sell this way. Let's face it, there is no chance that we can watch salespeople closely enough that we can supervise them that closely that we can ensure that they will do everything we want them to do in precisely the way we'd like them to do it. I've been a salesperson since before I could drive to work. I guarantee you it wouldn't work on me, and it won't work on your teams either. They have to buy in. They've got to believe that it's in their personal best interest, their best interest, the best interest of their customers, and the best interest of the company before they will actually engage in the behaviors that you're trying to drive. Number 3, it's essential that they become trusted advisors. My favorite saying from this morning was when Neg said, we've got to have a servant's heart. Folks, if you go pick up the typical book about selling, you're not going to see that phrase. You're not going to see trusted advisor, although it's catching on now. But what many salespeople have been taught to do actually puts them in competition with their customers. It actually creates, instead of a collaborative relationship, it creates a confrontational relationship. If we're going to be successful at helping customers, we can't just do that by innovating with products that bring them more value and measuring the results. We can't just do it by making certain that the customer care teams are focused on what's in the best interest of the customer. Everybody from that very first conversation, in fact, you could argue the first engagement on the internet, everybody has got to be skilled at becoming a trusted advisor to the customer. And that one's so critical, we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about it in just a moment. The next one, back up if you would, please. The next one here, that, by the way, for our earlier speaker, this is backup. It's not on here, it's right here. This is the official backup signal. Number 4 is invest in them. Invest in their knowledge and skills. During the recent recession, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2 of the most respected companies in American business made enormous multi-million-dollar investments in retooling their sales forces. And by the way, when I say retooling, I don't mean they got them iPads. They did, but it was kind of easy for them because they're kind of in the technology space. I mean retooling the skill and knowledge of those people. A true transformation to equip them for a different selling environment. They made their investment in the heart of a recession. We've got to make investments in those people because they are the ones that are representing us to our customers. And if we don't equip them with the right skill and knowledge, they can't do the kinds of things that Jean-Pierre was talking about earlier. They can't help the customer figure out what the right ROI is. They can't help the customer evaluate all these different alternatives. They can't become trusted advisors. Next is, if we're going to actually transform their behavior, we've got to drive coaching and accountability in the organization. You cannot drive better selling behavior by just measuring the result of the behavior. If all we do is measure what people sold last month, we are it's literally like driving down the road looking in the rearview mirror. I can promise you there will be a crash, and you'll be able to explain it after the fact, but you can't stop it. We've got to invest in coaching and accountability that actually measures behaviors like effective coaching engagements, like professional development and learning, and show how those behaviors correlate to better results so that we do get everybody on board with the right kind of customer engagement model. Next, we've got to integrate all customer contact. Now, by that, I don't necessarily mean that one person has to be responsible for all contacts. Nothing like that. Nothing that crazy. What it does mean is we've got to make certain that the messaging and the behaviors are properly aligned. Too often, we implement sales methodologies, but we don't tell the marketing people what it is we taught the salespeople to do. One of the hardest jobs, and I actually have my degree in marketing, I've run a couple of product development teams. One of the hardest jobs in business, actually, is being responsible for marketing in an organization where one of marketing's primary functions is to support sales, but the sales team has no common process. Because what you end up with is a ton of people asking for a different version of the same thing, and none of them being happy with what you give them. We've got to integrate marketing and sales so that marketing understands what the sales model looks like, what the methodology is, and provides the kind of programs and tools and support that actually help drive the behavior. Then we've got to make certain we integrate customer care so that they understand the important role they play in engaging with the customer, not just responding, because that's acceptable care, but exceptional care is assuming responsibility for the overall health and well-being of that customer and making certain that every conversation is productive. And then, finally, we've got to integrate our CRM solutions to the model. So we'll talk about 3 of these in a little bit more detail, beginning with becoming a trusted advisor. We heard about it earlier this morning. Jean-Pierre talked about it. Neg talked about it. Folks, if we're going to actually become trusted advisors to our customers, it's important that we do 2 things. It's not hard, but it requires discipline, skill, and knowledge. 2 things we have to do. First, we have got to be committed to the customer's success. So we've got to demonstrate our commitment to their success and well-being. And then number 2, we've got to demonstrate the competence to actually help them. Concern and competence are the 2 things that trusted advisors exhibit all the time. And for SMBs, it means we've got to help them weed through all the different choices to make the choice that's best for their business. And in order to do that, we've got to know their business. We've got to have meaningful business conversations. We had a bunch of people who are either directly or indirectly responsible for sales. Raise your hand if you've ever heard that in order to sell more, you have to better understand your customer's business. Raise your hand if you've ever heard that. In a B2B space, in order to sell more, we got to better understand our customer's business. I have heard that in every sales job I've ever been in. Then I go out on calls with salespeople who have also heard it. And here's what I hear them say: I want to learn as much as I can about your business today. What are you doing for search? Where are you advertising? Next thing you know, we're not learning anything about their business. We're learning about what needs they have already defined for the products and services we provide. I run an SMB. Let me assure you, just like a big company, we have a vision. Now, sometimes in the SMB space, the vision is make the best pizza I can for Lakewood, Texas. Be recognized as the best. Sometimes the vision is bigger than that for small to medium-sized companies. Sometimes their vision is to be a large multinational company. But they started as a small local company. All right? If we're going to help them realize their vision, we have to start by understanding what it is. Then, obviously, in order for them to realize their vision, they've got to be profitable. So we need to understand, where does the money come from? And where does it go to? It's not just about, as we heard earlier, it's not always just about getting new customers. Sometimes the best money comes from existing customers. And the right solutions leverage that. But we can't provide that solution nor position its power for the customer if we don't know this about their business. Then it's more than just money. Yes, small business owners have to manage revenues and expenses, but they also have to manage the things that indirectly affect revenues and expenses, like productivity and efficiency, the image they project, which is one we get. But it's also about the safety, security, and stability of the people and their information. Those are things that are actually important to small businesses. We need to understand what they're doing in those areas as well. Ultimately, what they do to drive those areas, to drive improvement in productivity and efficiency, to project a better image, to maximize revenues, control expenses is they set goals, they implement plans, they define processes, right? They structure even a small company with roles and responsibilities. They bring people on board. Sometimes the thing that we could help them with most isn't even getting another customer. Sometimes, depending on their vision, their goals, their plans, their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, sometimes the way we could help them best is by helping them recruit more talent. It's a big challenge for some small businesses that are growing. So if we're really going to be a trusted advisor to our customers and prospective customers, we've got to do more than say, I want to be your trusted advisor and I got a boatload of solutions to prove it. We've got to engage them in a meaningful conversation about their business, one where we learn about what it is that they want to accomplish so that we can leverage our solutions and our expertise to help them. Only then, by the way, can we help them differentiate from a large list of solutions, every one of which would meet their most basic needs. That's how we really become a trusted advisor. Now, if you want to drive that kind of behavior, folks, you have to coach people. Selling is a performance profession. It is a competitive endeavor whereby I'm not measured based on what I do, I'm measured based on what I do vis-a-vis what other people do. And customers vote with their money. If you run a sales organization and you currently have a formal coaching program in place, raise your hand right now. It is probably the hottest topic in all of sales effectiveness is coaching. And you want to know why it's such a hot topic? Because so few managers actually do it. Here's a typical sales manager coaching conversation. You're not on your number. That won't work here. You need to be on your number. But I like you. I'm going to give you 30, now I'm going to give you 60 days because I like you to get on your number. Are we clear? Do you understand what it is you got to do now? You got to get on your number. So then what we are doing is we're sending the same person into the same environment, equipped with the same skill and knowledge, but expecting that because we talked about the number, that somehow they're going to produce a different result. Shockingly, when it doesn't work, we pip them so that they really know we're serious about them getting on their number, and then we get rid of them. And then we give the same sales manager a new person. Because they didn't mess up that one badly enough, we want them to try it again with somebody new. This is why sales has, in most organizations, the highest turnover of any part of the company. It's ridiculous. And you know, it's not necessary. Coaching is very well understood. What you see up on the screen is a model for coaching. Actually, I'll even argue it's the model for coaching. The name is the only thing we gave it. All coaches do 5 things, all of them. Sales managers rarely do any of these well, and some they don't do at all. I'll give you a couple examples here as we go through it. The first one, G, is goal setting. If you've ever had a personal trainer, you know that coaches don't set goals by saying, here's what I want you to do for me. I think you should be running a 7-minute mile. That's how we're going to build our plan. Coaches figure out what it is we want to accomplish and then help us to create the plan that gets us there. Sales managers don't do that. Here's what I need from you. I need from you 4 new customers a month. Now, if we're lucky, the sales manager actually breaks that down, not in a very scientific way, by the way, but they say, our analysis shows that in order for you to get 4 new customers a month, you have to see 20 prospective customers a month. By the way, when we do that, when we say everybody has to see 20 customers a month and we ignore the individual closing ratios, the individual average sale value, what we are saying to the sales team is, we were too lazy to actually do the analysis right. Our superficial analysis, however, is what we're going to measure you against. Shockingly, they don't react well. Real goal setting isn't just saying, here's your target. It's asking, what is it that you want to accomplish, and then building a plan that will get them there. They'll own that. They'll commit to that. Then coaches uncover gaps in performance, but they don't just uncover gaps in performance, they uncover the gap in behavior that led to the gap in performance. A coach doesn't say, you didn't make your number, but I've done some deep analysis and I've learned that the reason you didn't make your number is you're not finding enough new opportunities. You, my friend, need more opportunities. I suggest that you focus your energy on finding more opportunities. That's not very insightful coaching. We've got to get to the gap in behavior that is leading to the gap in performance, because that's what has to change. Now, in order to really make it actionable, we got to go to this next step. We've got to identify the root cause of that gap. You see, if somebody isn't engaged in the optimal selling behavior, isn't working with their customers in the best fashion possible, there is a reason. Either they lack the capacity to do it, which seems to be the underlying assumption of most sales managers. Well, if they're not doing it, they just can't. That rarely is the real root cause, by the way. I mean, frankly, as a lifelong sales professional, I mean, literally since before I could get to work myself and selling things in the neighborhood before that, I can tell you, you don't have to be that smart. It's generally not a capacity issue. Often, it is a commitment issue. They don't understand the model or aren't committed to it, or they lack the knowledge of what they should be doing or of the solutions that is requisite in order to engage in the skill, or they're just not yet proficient with the skill. If we don't identify the root cause of the gap, then guess what? It can't be fixed. While we were golfing yesterday, my team pointed out that I had some swing flaws. I thought that was real helpful. They pointed it out frequently that I had some swing flaws, right? Like apparently if you're turning your hands over, you can hook the ball very consistently. And if you block, you can slice it too. And if you do both at the same time, it doesn't go straight. It actually will do both. It's crazy. Right? Now imagine you took a golf lesson, you told your golf coach, your instructor, what you wanted to accomplish. The coach looked at your swing and said, yeah, that's ugly, which is kind of what I got yesterday. That's really ugly. And here's what's happening. You're turning your hands over. That's why you're hooking the ball. Can I have my money now? I mean, think about that for a minute. You'd say, wait a minute, it's not fixed. I just know how bad I am now and why. That's what sales managers do if they do that at all. You don't have enough new opportunities. The reason you don't is because when you're prospecting, you're not very compelling and you're not talking to the right people. You got to get more compelling. Folks, we've got to give people, which is what the D stands for, we've got to give people some corrective action, a task, a drill that will change the behavior. If they're lacking the skill, we need them to practice the skill. If they're lacking knowledge, we need to show them how to acquire the knowledge. If they're lacking a commitment to engaging with the customer in the way that we know is best, we better get them committed. If we don't do that, and if we don't do it in small bite-sized pieces, they're not going to get any better. And our customer interactions aren't going to get any better, and our solutions aren't going to get anywhere near the uptake that we should, and we are going to miss out on a $3.2 billion opportunity based on the slides we saw earlier. Totally unacceptable and not necessary. If you have a sales team of 100 people and every one of them gets better just one thing, just one little thing, every week they work, as a team, we are better at 5,000 things in the marketplace. It's a competitive effort. We are fielding a significantly better team. That's what coaching does. And then finally, we've got to constantly evaluate performance again. Not performance as in, did they sell more as a result, although that's part of it, but performance as in, did the coaching address the underlying root cause, shrink the gap in behavior and the gap in performance. And we've got to implement systems that allow us to do this easily. One of the biggest challenges coaches have is they don't have a library of assignments. If you're a PGA teaching pro and you find a person with an ugly swing like mine, you got a whole library of drills to give them to work on to fix it. We need to supply sales coaches with the same kind of thing, and we can only do that when we have a common methodology, which gets to the next point. How many of you have a CRM solution today? Raise your hands if you have a CRM solution, and then I want you to keep them up for a minute. I can actually see your hands. I know you're not raising your hands. Believe it or not, I can actually see. So if you have any kind of CRM, SFA solution, okay, if you use Salesforce.com, keep your hand up. It's a pretty high percentage. It is possible to leverage tools like this to drive significant improvements in sales performance, but I'll also tell you that most companies aren't. Why? Because these tools are big information repositories. We put them in the hands of people that don't know what information they're after in some cases, haven't agreed all as a group on what information they're going to get, and or we haven't made it clear what to do with the information, so the tool doesn't help the salesperson. Doesn't have to be that way. I'm going to go through a couple quick slides here. You can actually integrate the methodology into the process and the process into the tool such that it helps people. This is Salesforce.com. It's the same Salesforce.com anybody can get, but methodology is integrated into it, so it actually helps the salesperson. The salesperson in this environment knows the 9 information objectives that he or she is responsible for gathering, the 9 things they're supposed to learn about their customers. And if there are things missing, if there are danger zones that could negatively impact this person's ability to execute, ability to serve the customer, the danger zones just show up. Systems can do this. Systems can actually add value to the salesperson, help them engage with the customer better. Systems can also help them learn. You can see the little question mark over there by business state and gaps. If I'm a salesperson and I'm struggling to get that piece of information, don't send me to a training class. If I'm actually clear enough that I know I got a problem, let me press the button. And when I do, bring up a screen that refreshes me on what it means when we say business state and gaps. And give me a link to online learning so that I can go get refreshed on my skill or knowledge right now. And build it right into the tool. Don't make me go somewhere else. Don't make me take a week of training. Let me get better in 20 or 30 minutes, and I'll invest the time, and I'll do it incrementally on a consistent basis, which is how real change happens. Folks, there's an enormous market opportunity. I think you heard a lot this morning about the kinds of things that are necessary in order to capitalize on the opportunity and really transform our businesses here. We've got to continue to innovate, continue to develop solutions that bring real value to small, medium-sized businesses. But we've also got to change the way in which we engage with those customers because it's getting increasingly confusing for them. If we don't invest in the skill and knowledge of the sales team, who is going to help the customer figure it out? And as you heard, if they don't figure it out, it doesn't just have a negative impact on us. They may not be here. I got to tell you, I don't want my local pizza place gone. Lover's Pizza needs to stay where they are, but I'm only one guy, and I eat a lot of pizza. I can't support them all on my own. There are other local restaurants I have to support, and many of them, frankly. I'm asking you to help me, help them, by engaging them in a way that really allows them to make better decisions. With that, a couple of case studies. Does it work if people do this? There's a couple quick examples for you. The first one is a local market, actually the LA office, big office of a national telecom company. Oh, I'm sorry, this was Nashville, and this was during the deregulation of local telecom space. And this will give you an indication that it's not about training, right? The company that trained this local office trained all the offices. When across the country that company had 60% turnover, that local office had only 20% turnover. When across the company they had less than half their people making their objective, that market had literally every person on the team hitting the same objective. Same solution set, same market characteristics. The first market to actually make money. What was the difference? Literally one sales manager who coached. One coaching manager can affect a whole team, and I've got an unbelievable number of stories like that. Had one recently where a sales manager went back into the market after having gone out and being a trainer and started implementing coaching in that market, took the market from 14th, dead last in the region, to number 3 in just 90 days. Coaching makes a huge difference. The next one's the LA office of a wireless operator. They decided that they would not only implement a common methodology for selling, but they would coach to it, and coach to it consistently, literally every day for 30 minutes. Over a 3-month period, they tripled their performance. And it may even be understated because they were ignoring longer, bigger deals, but they did note that the sales cycle had been cut in half on bigger opportunities by executing, by engaging the customer in a different way than they had before. No new solutions required. And then the last one, if you don't know whether or not you should invest in your teams, the last one should convince you. This company invested roughly $17 million, and this is all in. This is travel. This is big investment. It's a big company, 8,000 salespeople. All right, over a 24-month period. They had only gotten, when they did the study, about 25% adoption on the new methodology. They hadn't yet rolled out a coaching program, but the people who had adopted the new way of engaging customers, those 25%, generated in that period $325 million in incremental revenue. It's a huge opportunity to improve performance if we make the investment in salespeople. I want to thank you for your time and attention, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thanks.